I'm Spencer Mazyck, and joining me now is lawyer turned executive director of the Museum of Food and Drink, Peter Kim. MoFad is a nonprofit organization chartered by the New York State Education Department. Welcome, Peter. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks so much, Spencer. Great to be here.
So, Peter, I want to begin by talking about what you did immediately following college, because you had a pretty interesting career before going to law school. So tell us, what was your first job after graduating from Brown?
So after graduating from Brown, I did something called the Emerson Hunger Fellowship, and this was a sort of leadership development program that placed people in positions doing hunger and poverty policy work. So I first worked at the food stamp program in Denver, Colorado, and then after that I did some policy work in D.C.
So what drew you, though, to that particular cause of poverty and hunger?
I had always thought, when I was in college, I wanted to do something that worked in the public interest. It's something that's very fulfilling for me, and I remember reading about the problem of hunger in the U.S., and it's something that people aren't really aware of. It's not something that people usually put together, the word hunger in the U.S., but there actually is a problem of hunger and particularly food insecurity in the U.S. And so after learning about that, I found about this program, and I thought it looked like an excellent opportunity for me to do some work there and to develop my knowledge and skills in that world. And so I applied and got it.
Yeah, and after spending a little more than a year there at the Congressional Hunger Center, you then joined the Peace Corps to do what?
So I was doing public health work, and I was placed out in the sticks. I was,
where
archetype
was that?
of a Peace Corps experience. It's a village called Ban Kim in Cameroon, and that's in Central Africa. And I had an incredible experience there, and I was doing public health work. I actually started a nonprofit there, and it was called L'Art de Vivre, which means the art of living. And what we did with that program was we gave high school students art classes, and then also combined that with education about various public health issues. And I tried to make it as much about empowerment as possible, so the kids would actually choose what they wanted to learn about and choose the ways in which they wanted to express themselves. Some people did comic books, others did flip charts and whatnot. We did a big mural together, and it turned out to be a really great way of engaging kids into this program because there weren't so many creative outlets in a village like that. Turned out really well, and kept going even after I left.
No, that's pretty cool. And so why did you then decide to go to law school in 2006?
I'm actually a person who made a actual decision to go to law school. I feel like a lot of times what you hear from people is,
I didn't know what to do. Exactly.
It seems like an all-purpose degree.
Yeah.
I was tired of sleeping on my parents' couch. I actually, when I was in Cameroon, it's an incredible place, and I learned so much. And there's a really strong community network there. But the government and the legal system leave a lot to be desired. And the saying, don't know what it's got till it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
What you got till it's gone.
You don't know what you got until it's gone, yeah.
Exactly.
Joni Mitchell.
Exactly, Joni Mitchell, later Q-Tip. But that really applies to the legal system. That it's one of these things where, you can harp all you want about how imperfect the legal system is, but once it's gone, you're like, oh.
I wish it was there. Yeah, what happened?
Yeah, exactly. I guess ironically, it was in the absence where I saw the sort of negative space and the absence of law in Cameroon. That's where I started to really appreciate the fundamental role of the legal system, especially in sort of allowing people to make plans for the future, to do business with one another. And so
how did that, though, impact your decision to go, though? Did you want to play a role in the legal system? Is that why you went to law school?
Yeah, I think I had some, there's a complex story here, but, suffice it to say that I was interested in doing international development, and that's what drove me to do the Peace Corps. And I realized by the end of my service that doing international development is an ethical minefield. And I found that it was something that I'd say I think it's a challenging field to work in. Then I think I was worried about getting into it for the right reasons, but not necessarily having the most positive effect. I saw a lot of development projects kind of go awry. Many that went well, but many that went awry as well. And so, one thing I thought to myself was, a legal system is really something that would be very helpful to a country like Cameroon. And so I thought, I'd like to train myself as a lawyer, and perhaps with that legal training, I'd be able to come back and do something that would be less about, development which can be paternalistic if it's done in the worst way, in the wrong way, but rather be more about empowerment and creating a system such that people are allowed to sort of develop themselves as it should be,
And yes, but Peter, after you graduated from the University of Pennsylvania School of Law, you didn't go back to Cameroon, you went to Debevoise.
Yeah.
So can you tell us about your experience there at the firm? Did you enjoy it?
Yes, Debevoise was an excellent place to work. Not just saying that to be, politically correct, but it was really a spectacular place. A lot of really smart people, and one thing I really appreciated about the people I worked with at Debevoise was that they were all intellectually curious, and that's the thing that I loved so much about law school was you get these questions and they tap into deeper normative questions and ethical questions and philosophical questions. And I love the fact that, a dispute over like a ham sandwich, in some kind of like tort case, whatnot, that could actually tap into deeper societal norms. And I think that's really cool. That I think that the rules that we set to govern the ways in which we interact with each other, that reflects a common decision about what we value and how we decide to do business. Anyway, these kinds of conversations were par for the course at Debevoise. We'd be like doing a motion to dismiss, and then we'd be like, but why is the law like this? And
so you appreciated the intellectual discourse that you had there at the firm, which is probably one of the reasons why you chose that specific firm, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And so if it weren't for that, if it were really just about getting through the work, that would have made things pretty difficult for me. But when you're working with people who are thinking about this and you can have these sort of conversations, like that helps.
Is it also true, though, that you attended the French Culinary Institute while practicing law?
Yeah, I did.
How did you find the time to do that?
That was tough. That was really hard. There were times the French Culinary Institute. It's now called the International Culinary Center, but back then it was the FCI. They have these weekend classes that you can do for over 6 months, and I've always been, I've always had a passion for food. And
I was going to say, I'm beginning to detect a theme here that centers around food. First, you wanted to make sure that people had access to it.
Yeah, exactly.
And now you wanted to learn how to create it.
Yes, absolutely. And I consider myself always pretty handy in the kitchen, but I thought that it would be, interesting to see what it's like to go to culinary school. So I went, and yeah, it was hard, and I had to, a lot of times I'd be like chopping vegetables and like making a sauce, and then like I'd have to run out and be like, chef, sorry, I need to like take a break, and go out and like on the BlackBerry, like, okay, like, here's what we gotta tell the client, go back in and like, start like
continue cooking.
Yeah, exactly.
Hopefully you didn't burn too many dishes doing that.
No, and like it was just a class, so even if I did, there wouldn't be any angry customers. So.
Well, and how did you then discover MoFad, the Museum of Food and Drink?
So another great thing about Debevoise is that they have a very they support pro bono work. I did a lot of pro bono work while I was at Debevoise, and I ended up going to this fundraiser for this organization called the Museum of Food and Drink. And I mean, instantly, the name itself
drew you in, sucked you in.
And that's actually great. I love that a name can kind of spur the imagination to start thinking. And then a lot of times when I meet people, this is sort of a tangent, I'll say like, Museum of Food and Drink. What do you think? What does it mean to you? What's inside this building, Right. And some people, they can really start thinking about all these kinds of things that could be in there. Anyway, so...
Well, and I should say, we'll get to this later, but it's not actually a building, is it?
No, not yet.
Okay,
it will be.
Got it.
So I went to this fundraiser, and sure enough, it was this amazing meal. It was a 9-course lunch, and each course was... had been created by a distinguished chef from New York. So there was David Chang, they had Wiley Dufresne, Mark Ladner, and each course had a museum theme to it. Food is medicine, fad diets, ancient Roman food, space food. And so these themes were nods to the kinds of exhibits that you'd see in the museum. Of course, the museum wouldn't be a place where you just get plated meals, but it was a plated meal that gave a nod to sort of these themes. Mm-hmm. And it was incredible, like for the ancient Roman meal, Chef Mark rolled out this giant roasted ostrich and brought it out and on this bread that the ancient Romans would eat with, and it was seasoned with garum, which is this this fish sauce that was used by. And we'd eat it with our hands, and it wasn't really meant to be a truly educational experience. It was really more about entertainment than anything.
Tasting.
But there was certainly a serious aspect to it, and the chefs had done research, they presented the research, and everybody at the table was talking, and it's great, And
well, so Peter, were you so mesmerized by the presentation that you said, hey, I want to do pro bono work for you guys? Is that what happened?
Exactly. So, Dave Arnold, who's the founder of MoFad, the Museum of Food and Drink, he talked about his vision for MoFad, and I thought to myself, this is something that really needs to happen. And
but on the spot that night, you suggested that you do pro bono work for them. Is that right?
No, not quite.
Okay.
I mean, honestly, I was probably too drunk to do that. There was a lot of booze. But afterwards, I wrote, and I was just thinking like, this is such a great organization. I'd love to help them. Seemed like they had everything together. But I said, why not? I wrote an email. I said, this is why I think your idea is great. And I said, I can't offer much, but what I can offer is pro bono legal counsel if you want it. And sure enough, I got a response back, and they said, sure, we could use some help. And I said, bring in your papers, let's meet, let's talk. And when I saw everything, I said, oh yeah, you really need legal help. You really, really need it. And so we worked together, and over the course of a year to get MoFad set up as a nonprofit. Turned out that they had really just started. So. External appearances, it looked like, with this very fancy fundraiser, it looked amazing, but they needed help. And
but when did you decide, though, to leave law behind and join the organization full time?
I never thought when I got MoFad as a pro bono client that I'd actually ever go over to join them. I will admit,
because it was a startup, but why did you think that?
Well, I just never imagined that I'd have anything to contribute to a museum. I don't know. I've never worked in a museum. I've never run a nonprofit. I never saw exactly how I would fit into that. I certainly was looking at the time to do something entrepreneurial, and at that time I was considering a few different for-profit ideas, but it just never crossed my mind. And I think a year later, it's kind of like that moment in the movies where the girl takes off the glasses and lets her hair down. And you're like, oh my God, my best friend. All
right
along,
now,
if
you're now my love interest.
Yeah, exactly. And so I remember talking to Dave, the founder, and saying yo, Dave, this idea has legs, right? The time is right. People need something like this. How does New York not have a food museum? And you've got this great network, and we've got a great idea. What you need is somebody who can just put the nose to the grindstone and really make
But was
happen.
there any reluctance, though, in leaving what many people would consider a very stable profession as a lawyer to pursue this startup, as I mentioned?
Surprisingly, no. I mean...
But what about from a financial perspective? Because you had to take a certain amount of financial risk here.
Oh, it was a massive financial risk. It continues to be a financial risk. Are you kidding me? It was enormously risky. I identified the risk. I really thought everything through as a lawyer would. But I'll tell you, I saw it and I knew that this is crazy, right? But I believe so passionately in the idea, and I thought this is an opportunity to really do something great and to do it the right way. Because there's a lot of ways you could do a food museum that would be, I think, just a shame. It could become just a sort of a food court or some kind of shill for just for marketing, and that's it. What I imagine is something quite different, and that's what Dave does too. And so I want to do this the right way.
So what does an executive director do then at MoFad? What does the role entail?
Well, so when I left Debevoise and I went over to MoFad, and I had a couple other people working with me, and it was just sort of sitting and drumming our fingers and be like, okay, build a museum, build a museum. All right, what do you do to build a museum? The role has evolved over time, and essentially it's anything and everything. I mean, I've obviously I'm leading the sort of strategic, the strategic development of MoFad. I'm doing a lot of the outreach to find our donors, and I'm trying to recruit board members right now. But then there's a whole other spectrum of things. I do a lot of the design work for MoFad.
Design of the structure, or
no, graphic design things.
Wow.
And then there's we have an exhibit that I'll tell you about in a little bit that's mounted on a trailer. We needed a driver for this like truck, and I just was like, I just learned on the fly how to drive like a 50-foot rig. There was like, with our exhibit, we have to do all these modifications and building things, and so there's a lot of that.
Well,
sort
so
of,
you
like,
really are
stuff.
hands-on, and you do just about a little of everything then.
Everything.
And so are you also in the planning stages of getting a building, a structure? Because as I mentioned earlier, there are no walls. There's no brick and mortar here.
Yeah. Because we don't have the physical home yet, what we've decided to do is to create pop-up exhibits and programs that we can do that don't require having 4 walls and a roof. So our first idea, we're thinking about, we need to do an exhibit that really captures the essence of what we want to do with MoFad. It has to be something that's sensational. It has to be something that taps into a really important story. And it has to be something that also embodies this really crucial aspect of MoFad, which is the interactivity. The Museum of Food and Drink is not going to be like any other museum. You'll be able to actually eat the exhibits in this museum. And we want to create as hands-on of an experience as possible. So we went to the drawing boards. We have hundreds of ideas for exhibits, right?
Are all of them as tasty, as functional, and as educational as that one?
This is the perfect one. Like the puffing gun, it really hit on everything. So what is the puffing gun? People are wondering, like, what?
What are you talking about?
Puffing gun. What is puffing gun? Puffing gun is the puffing gun is a 3,200-pound machine, and it spins and it heats up ingredients under high pressure. And when the ingredients hit a certain pressure, you literally take a metal stick and just hit the thing with the stick, and it goes boom, and there's a sound of 2 shotguns going on, and these ingredients just go exploding out, and they puff everywhere. And okay, so you're like, okay, so that sounds cool, but what about it? Well, this happens to be the machine that was used for decades in the middle of the 20th century by all of the major cereal companies.
And the one that you guys use actually is by Kellogg, is that right?
Yes, it was actually initially designed by Kellogg's, and it was used also by, as I understand it, every General Mills, every company, and this was really the workhorse of the cereal industry for a while.
I think it's very interesting because I love cereal.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite things to eat. I eat it every morning, so to realize how it's made and where it comes from, I think is fascinating.
Yeah, and one of the reasons we picked cereal was precisely for that reason. Cereal has an incredible market penetration. I don't have the figures off the top of my head, but it's like close to 100%. Like everybody has cereal in their pantry, and it's a shared experience. It ties in. Everybody's got that sort of emotional memory of, looking at the cereal box while eating cereal and watching cartoons as a kid. And it's something that is an American creation, So the puffing gun, it came at a time right when the breakfast cereal industry had started shooting forward and had gone from this sort of like smaller industry just in Battle Creek, Michigan, to something that was more nationwide. And the puffing gun just caused ripples throughout the whole industry. Quaker snatched up the patent. They're the only ones that are able to use these puffing guns for a little while. And they built a whole marketing campaign around the sensation of the puffing gun, shot from guns, boom, pow. And every company was like sort of just like waiting on the sidelines for the patent to expire so they could get in on it. And once it did, every company got these puffing guns and they started making their own puffed cereals. And it started as like puffed rice, puffed wheat, but then they realized you can puff dough, right? And so Cheerios, you could puff Cheerios. Kix were puffed out of puffing guns. Cocoa Puffs, Trix, all these cereals were initially made in puffing guns. Now they're made with different kinds of machines, but at the time, it was a puffing gun.
It'd be pretty cool to actually see one. And one thing that I think is really cool about what you guys are doing is that the exhibits are mobile, so that means that you can travel the country, possibly even the world. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. It's mounted on a trailer. We're retooling it a bit right now, and then next year we want to take it out, bring it into schools, and build a whole curriculum around it so we can teach kids about the science behind puffing. So there'll be hands-on activities with that.
What's the mission of MoFad? What's its goal? Is it to educate people about food?
Yeah, we're not going to take a didactic approach to it. I think we come from, our values include the fact that we believe that food is an intensely personal choice, right? And so what's really the most important thing is for people to be intellectually curious and to care, And so our goal is to actually inspire this sort of day-to-day intellectual curiosity about what we eat and why we eat what we eat. And that's it in a nutshell. I want people to walk down the aisles of the grocery store and no longer just see cans of coffee and a bag of celery and a stack of potatoes, but actually now look at it and say oh, this coffee, well, it connects to this whole system of trade, and there's a history behind coffee, and it's a really interesting story behind coffee. Now, this is an Arabica bean. This is what it means.
Right.
This
they
is the
get
kind of
the whole story about it. So, would you say that you found your higher calling there at the museum?
Yes, definitely.
This is what you meant to do. This is what you were born to do.
Yeah, it feels great. We're building something. It's something that I think it's amazing when you find something that's fun, and I can't think of a better word for it, but it's kind of childlike, but awesome, but also serves a really important public purpose. And having found that and seeing that it kind of taps both my right and left brain, and I'm drawing on my lawyer skills, but I'm also tapping all these other things that I would never be doing. I mean, when am I going to be firing a puffing gun in a law firm? Never. So, tapping all those different facets, it's definitely a great fit. That said, it's a lot of risk,
Yeah, of course.
And I can't say it's all roses. It's every day it's a hustle, and we're just barely eking by. We have a lot of support, but the reality is we're a nonprofit and we're a startup. And so,
well, the goal to provide us all with a deeper understanding of the many connections between food and the world around us is a noble one. So we wish you best of luck. Thanks so much for joining us today, Peter.
Thanks so much, Spencer.
For more information on this or other topics, subscribe to BloombergLaw.com. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you for joining us. Bye, everybody.